if I learned one lesson from my time with the CIA, it is this. Everybody believes they are the good guy. I was an officer with the CIA clandestine service and worked undercover on counterterrorism and intelligence all around the world for almost 10 years. The conversation that's going on in the United States right now about ISIS and about the United States overseas is more oversimplified than ever. While it may be easier to dismiss your enemy as evil, hearing them out on policy concerns is actually an amazing thing, because as long as your enemy is a subhuman psychopath that's going to attack you no matter what you do, this never ends. But if your enemy is a policy, however complicated, that we can work with. If you're walking down the street in Iraq or Syria and ask anybody why America dropped bombs, you get, they were waging war on Islam.
As I report to you, air attacks are underway against military targets in Iraq.
President Obama and his three predecessors each ordered the bombardment of Iraq.
American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations.
During 7 presidential terms, the last 28 years, the United States has dropped in excess of 116,000 bombs in the area. By any definition, that is war. Well, another area they cannot be too happy about is the cast of characters. Actually make that very bad characters either supported or condoned.
While America, the government now, preaches democracy, it has propped up authoritarian leaders and also overthrown democratically elected ones.
The US today has set a double standard, calling whoever goes against its injustice a terrorist. It wants to occupy our countries, steal our resources.
There's one reason why the enemy, and they are our enemies, want to kill us, and that is occupation. We occupy their territory. It would be like the Chinese had their navy in the Gulf of Mexico and had bases in New Hampshire and in Texas, and they think we wouldn't pull out our gun and do some shooting?
The US government has committed acts that are extremely unjust, hideous, and criminal through its support of the Israeli occupation of Palestine.
I think the question we need to be asking as Americans examining our foreign policy is whether or not we're pouring kerosene on a candle.
A study by the Watson Institute at Brown University reports that 6,800 plus U.S. service members have been killed in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In addition, there were 6,900 contract mercenaries, who we tend to ignore, who have also been killed. This may be the saddest statistic of all. Almost 1 million GIs have put in for disability. Making matters worse is the large number of drug overdoses and suicides by returning veterans. 370,000 people have died due to direct war violence and many more indirectly. 370,000 people. Wow. 210,000 civilians have been killed. Now, keep in mind, there's kids involved in all that. It's not a bunch of adults, these are civilians, which means there was as likely kids as there were adults. And you have to wonder, having dropped 116,000 bombs, how many of those civilians did we kill? Are we killing more civilians than we're ever going to save? And there are over 7 million who are refugees. And last but certainly not least is the price tag. of $4.4 trillion, and that is just for Iraq. For who? For what? This has been an enormous price to pay. And what have we achieved? Well, here is the recent testimony from the CIA director to the United States Senate.
Unfortunately, despite all our progress against ISIL on the battlefield and in the financial realm, our efforts have not reduced the group's terrorism capability and global reach. Unfortunately, despite all our progress against ISIL on the battlefield and in the financial realm, our efforts have not reduced the group's terrorism capability and global reach.
Upon review, ISIS would seem to have, at least from their point of view, some reasonable but serious concerns regarding U.S. policy. The top three are easy to resolve. We just need to bring our boys and girls home and stay the hell out of the internal politics of the Middle East nations. The final one, support of the Israeli occupation of Palestine, is a lot more complicated and is the subject of further analysis which follows.
An Al-Qaeda fighter made a point once during a debriefing. He said all these movies that America makes, like Independence Day and Hunger Games and Star Wars, they're all about a small, scrappy band of rebels who will do anything in their power with the limited resources available to them to expel an outside, technologically advanced invader. And what you don't realize, he said, is that to us, to the rest of the world, you are the Empire, and we are Luke and Han. You are the aliens, and we are Will Smith. The only real way to disarm your enemy is to listen to them. If you hear them out, if you're brave enough to really listen to their story, you can see that more often than not, you might have made some of the same choices if you'd lived their life instead of yours.
Okay then, let's see how we got here from the Arab perspective. Nathan Birnbaum coined the term Zionism in 1890. Its general definition means the national movement for the return of the Jewish people to their homeland. But how would this be seen by the Arabs living in Palestine? 1918, which is the first year available after the initiation of Zionism, there were 60,000 Jews and 600,000 Arabs in Palestine. So the Arabs enjoyed a 10-to-1 ratio at that point in time. Going all the way back to 1800, there were only 24,000 Jews in Palestine. In 1945, Muslims outnumbered Jews by a ratio of 2-to-1. However, by 1967, Jews outnumbered Muslims by 2 million people and enjoyed a 10-to-1 ratio. And this is what has the Muslims infuriated. They feel as though they were forced out of Palestine in favor of the Jew. And to further make their case, they would point out that the Jews have not been the majority in Palestine since the 1st century.
Over 4,000 years ago, Israel's destiny was fixed when God appeared to Father Abraham.
Certainly, the Jewish people are entitled to their religious beliefs, having hopes and dreams for a homeland based on those religious teachings makes perfectly good sense within the Jewish community. However, these convictions should have no bearing on the ultimate outcome for Palestine. It would be insulting to think that somehow the Jewish people have some direct communication from God and the other religions are tuned to the wrong frequency. It would be bigoted and chauvinistic to suggest that a religion followed by 0.2% of the world's population is superior to the other 99.8%. The good news is it's a very big world with plenty of places for a Jewish state. The selection of real estate for our homeland, which is surrounded by 1.6 billion Muslims, many, if not most of whom, wish Israel would either go away or be blown away. But to do that on the basis of religious beliefs is antithetical to my view and to the fundamental tenet of America, which is separation of church and state. And as a practical matter, it just doesn't work.
Palestinian radio, television, and school curricula remain filled with glorification of terrorists, demonization of Jews, and the daily repeated message that Israel should cease to exist. If tomorrow Israel laid down its arms and announced, "We will fight no more," what would happen? There would be an immediate destruction of the state of Israel and mass murder of its Jewish population.
During the last 2 millennia, 2,000 years, the Muslims have outnumbered the Jews in Palestine, and often by vast majorities. Israel was located on the basis of Jewish teachings, starting with a conversation between God and Abraham 4,000 years ago. There should be no expectation that anyone would voluntarily relinquish anything based on Jewish faith. Is it any wonder that the Muslims are angry and violent?
Israel and the notion of Israeli interests may in fact be dictating what America is doing. That what we're doing in the Middle East may not be to the benefit of America's national security, but to Israel's national security.
Everybody believes they're the good guy.